We've got updates regarding the Epstein cover-up as Ghislaine Maxwell is now asking the Supreme Court to overturn her conviction. I'm going to share this and then an update about the aid that is now finally entering Gaza. Have a listen.
The White House and Congress are, of course, engrossed in this controversy over the Epstein files. And now all three branches of government could be dragged into this as Ghislaine Maxwell is asking the Supreme Court to take up her appeal. Her lawyers are arguing that her 2021 conviction for helping Epstein abuse teenage girls is invalid. They point to a 2007 non-prosecution agreement that Epstein entered into. Now, this is a very controversial agreement. It has largely been invalidated. But at the time, they told him that if he pleaded guilty to state-level charges, he could avoid federal criminal exposure. And Maxwell's lawyers argue that this should also extend to his associates like her. Will the Supreme Court go for this? Well, we'll see.
Now, the thinking is the Supreme Court, which is obviously conservative majority, if they are doing Trump's bidding, which I'm not saying they are, but if they're looking out for the old man up top, right, the executive branch there, King Trump, if that's what they're doing, they would want to deny her bid to have this looked at by the Supreme Court because they wouldn't want her to testify, right? Trump seemingly is considering giving her a pardon. Why? For what information will she reveal? Yet to be seen. Some folks say, oh, there's really nothing to the Epstein files. Well, in that case, why would they pardon her? But if there is something to it and people are named, but Trump isn't, what was she hiding? So she's really stuck between a rock and a hard place. And Trump is as well, because they've created this Frankenstein monster, which is, folks thinking that there's this deep state cover up, and there very well may be. We just don't know because we haven't had those files released yet. I wanted to share something interesting. And again, we'll, as new information comes out, we'll be covering the Epstein stuff. But of course, now that the House of Representatives are taking a nice long end of summer break, we might have to wait for those updates. This story's been going around. Jay Leno criticizing political late night hosts amid Colbert's late show cancellation. Now, I do think Jay Leno gets misquoted and misinterpreted a lot because he's generally like a comics comic. A lot of comics like him because he works the road still. He's just kind of like a blue collar guy for the long time. He claims he's never actually really spent the checks he's made from the Tonight Show. He has this, he has his own stand-up comedy sort of circuit he does. But either way, rubbing people the wrong way, Leno said, I like to think that people come to a comedy show to kind of get away from the things, the pressures of life, wherever it might be. And I love political humor, don't get me wrong. But what happens is people wind up cozying too much to one side or the other. Why shoot for just half an audience? Why not try to get the whole audience? Actually, and by the way, no offense to boomers out there, but I'm going to call this a boomer take because, and again, no offense. I get the boomers very upset at me. My millennial hair is very triggering. Clean that hair up. But listen, it's like, that's not the world we live in. We live in a world where you have a niche and you hit it hard. And, if you have a political mindset that the president is eroding the Constitution, that the Supreme Court's becoming a joke because it's packed with a couple of lunatics, that that they're not giving due process to people that are being deported, that they're creating trillions of dollars of debt even though they want to, rein the spending in. If you see all of these hypocrisies, you're really going to try to play both sides. Yeah, but the Democrats are pretty bad right now too. It's like, well, the Republicans are in power. You know what I mean? And that power doesn't have any checks and balances really right now. We're watching like a full-fledged sort of, dilemma play out, where what happens when the executive branch gets too much power. But what is really rich, as has been called out by people, is that Jay Leno saying, I don't like too much politics. Now, here he was kind of railing on Monica Lewinsky. Remember the 22-year-old intern who, was involved in the scandal with Bill Clinton? That book on the left is a book, obviously a joke that they created called The Slut in the Hat by Dr. Seuss, and then they have a blow-up doll. So again, times have changed, Leno, and maybe things are a little bit more politically, pointed, but let's not pretend like back then he was doing, an hour of clean comedy every night, right? Okay, big update in Gaza. Big update. Journalists covering the aid airdrops say they were warned by Israel not to film Gaza from the air or the airdrops will stop. Well, they filmed anyway. Have a listen.
We're now on our way to northern Gaza, where these pallets of food will be dropped from the aircraft to people on the ground. We were given quite a clear and strict pre-flight briefing that the Israelis have said we're not allowed to film any shots of Gaza from the air, and that if we do, these airdrop flights could either be cancelled or delayed. International journalists haven't been allowed access to Gaza since the war started, despite immense pressure and growing demands. And it seems they don't want us to show you images of Gaza from the air either.
So there it is. Now, journalism is all about transparency, right? It's all about speaking truth to power and showing the people what the heck is actually going on. I found this video on TikTok yesterday of like about a dozen bunny rabbits jumping on a trampoline. I thought it was so adorable. I sent it to my wife, and then I realized I have finally been duped by AI. Now, it's getting really good really fast. Now, that's a stupid example. The bunnies jumping on the trampoline. I'm sure someone who's watching goes, oh, that wasn't real. No, there was one of a deer jumping. It's all fake. It was all fake, right? The bunnies are not jumping on the trampoline. But what you have to remember is, in today's world, as I'm covering these stories, I have to look at the timestamp of everything I'm covering, make sure it's real, because we have such a real responsibility to get it right. And yet, the Israeli government, again, not the people, but the state of Israel, the government that is in part or directly responsible for this genocide, right? They're in a war against Hamas, the terrorist organization that controls Palestine. The amount of collateral damage is mind-blowing. I mean, every video I'm about to show you, you can just see rubble in the background. Well, here they have a can of chicken. He says it's chicken that arrived in part of this airdrops. We finally got it after more than 3 months of not eating meat. Now, I just want to tell you guys something, because I'm not trying to make this about me, but just trying to illustrate how devastating this problem is. I record this podcast. It's 1 a.m. I record this and then I go to bed with my family. I try to sleep in a little bit, and we co-sleep with our 15-month-old. He sleeps right next to me. And every night after I have to, put myself through looking at these images and videos, because I really feel that it's important to broadcast this to you guys, I just go in there and I hug my son and I realize we know no pain here. We know no suffering. I am fully fed. My family's fully provided for. And even if we wanted to help out, we would be stopped. These flotillas that are trying to break into Gaza, they're being stopped. They're not allowed to help. Doctors that are trying to go to Gaza, literally, they're coming back. Americans, British doctors, they're coming back and saying, we tried to bring baby formula. They wouldn't let it in. Now, the sinister thought is, are they trying to exterminate these people? Why would they not let baby formula in? Why are they letting babies starve? Because do they see these babies as future terrorists? It doesn't have to be that way. These are humans. We're all the same. And I kind of feel like the guy playing the violin as the ship goes down. But I believe that. This kid isn't a terrorist. This kid isn't a threat. He's just happy to show off the can of chicken meat that came in, that they can finally enjoy. That dopamine rush they all get that they have some chicken after 3 months of no meat. These videos of children cheering as their fathers come home, not just because the fathers have food, but because the fathers are alive, because they made it through the chaos of getting this sack of rice. Think of this moment. Imagine if you, your father, your son, imagine if you had to go through this basic sort of like survival where you have a sack of rice now. when that UFO situation was happening in Jersey a few months ago, I was like, listen, I don't know what's going on. Is the economy going to collapse? I have no idea. I went to Costco and I bought 4 extra bags of rice and some other thing. I was like, you know what? It'll just be good to have. Why not spend a couple $100? I'll get all of this extra stuff in case some crazy stuff happens, right? Stupid thought. But imagine you can't walk into your thing over there or drive to Whataburger and imagine if the only way to get food for your family is to go into some of these chaotic situations where people are being shot at in hopes that you could get a morsel of food. Another image of a man, I think this came from an airdrop where he had to kind of go out into the ocean or the sea to get this food. So here he is. Everyone's cheering for him as he opens up this box for his family. They're living in what looks to be some sort of like emergency tent. And they open the box and it's a bag of rice. Maybe it's some, other types of food, some milk maybe. And it's just 5 pounds of rice. And they're happy. There's a few other things in there. Listen, we live in 2025. People do these unboxings of frivolous things. Oh, I got these, bikinis. I wanted to unbox them and show them to you. Sure, fine, whatever. They're unboxing, essential food for their family just to get through the week. Here's Crystal Ball from Breaking Points and Sagar, who just had a child. There's something happens when you have a kid of your own because you empathize and you put yourself in that situation and you go, what if I was born or what if I lived in a region that was completely cut off from the rest of the world and I was starving my own family to death?
There's an interesting cultural moment that's worth examining where I think because of the images of these emaciated babies who are dying from this blockade, I think there's been some realization of how this is all going to look in the history books. And so there's some CYA going on of everybody from Richie Torres, Barry Weiss, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, who's been completely silent, suddenly feeling like we need to say something. Like we need to put something out. And many of these statements are pathetic, milquetoast, buy into a bunch of the, Israeli Hasbara propaganda. But something has happened that made all of these people at once feel like, okay, we need to express some sort of sympathy for these babies that our country, along with Israel, literally starving to death. There's an interesting...
Yeah, and, commentators are speaking up. Joe Rogan, Theo Vaughn, podcasters are speaking up. About a year ago, I had somebody in Gaza reach out to me. Maybe it was even longer, right when this war broke out. And they were... sort of begging me for help, and I didn't know what to do. And to be quite honest, selfishly, I was scared. I didn't know what side was right. I didn't know anything about the situation whatsoever. And I can say this unequivocally. Innocent people are on the right side of this story. Innocent people should not be starved. They should not be blown up or shot at. And in a world where we've got such great military technology with great precision, there should be such little collateral damage. We need to not just do better, but we really need to all speak up and get educated about what's going on so that we aren't on the wrong side of this in the history books. All right, I'll be back this afternoon, as I am twice a day, every day. Pop culture and politics, you know where to get it. We'll see you then. I'm Dave. This is The Rush.